Chapter 13 in Digital Marketing Analytics for BA 375 Online Marketing. In Chapter 13, we talk about building the research plan for when we're trying to develop, did our strategy work? Did our analytics work? How did this campaign work? And we're getting ready to report about our metrics. So how we develop the research plan before we can even build the report. First, we want to look at what are the sources we have of data within our organization. What tools and platforms do we have available to us that we're collecting information from? A variety of these we have discussed throughout the semester, such as social listening tools, Google Trends, Google AdWords, Google Analytics, social media platforms all have their own insights. The information that we collect from our paid media, such as pay-per-click and display ads. And then you can also purchase information from third-party researchers. So we can find data sets about our industry, about trends, about target markets, and we can pay for those data sets. Then we want to look at, are we analyzing all of our channels, or are we just focusing on a specific number of channels? And if we're just focusing on a specific number of channels, which channels are we going to focus on? So we have a wide variety of tools here and channels that we've talked about, everything from news sources to social media pages, private groups and forums, paid media sources, and our owned properties, such as our website and our own social media tools. We might do a combination of a variety of these. The book also talks about some of the lesser discussed social media tools, such as Reddit, that Reddit is actually a very, very robust community with a lot of information, and a lot of companies don't utilize it as much as they could be. Which source languages do we want to use? Which search terms? So if we're building a social listening tool or a social listening research question, we might be looking for very specific keywords. What is it that we're trying to research, and which keywords will help us get that research? Also, which languages do we want to focus in? Are we an international company where we want to look at a variety of languages and not just focus on one over another? Now, we have to recognize that we do not have unlimited resources in order to cover all of the possible marketing channels, marketing tools, keyword searches, and all of the languages and countries that a business could possibly operate in. So we need to focus in on a few things. 25% of the world population is English speaking, and there are 10 languages which capture 77% of the population. English being 25% of the population, Chinese is second at 20% of the population, and then we follow with Spanish, Japanese, Portuguese, Arabic, German, Russian, French, and Bahasa. Then, once we've determined what channels, what information, we want to build our hypothesis and look at our research methods of how we're going to answer that hypothesis. So we're going to talk about some of these in depth on various slides, but what question are we trying to answer? What exactly are we collecting data because we want to know? How long are we going to collect data for? Are we looking at a 6-month time frame? Are we looking at a 12-month time frame? Who is on our project team? Who is responsible for gathering data analyzing data, putting information together, writing the report? What is the depth of our analysis? Are we looking for surface level data? Are we trying to drill down to very specific posts? What is our coding framework? So coding framework in research is how are we going to label things? How are we going to label as for example, different posts. So we might have a whole list of social media posts and we might try to label these are talking about brand, these are customer complaints, these are talking about product A, these are talking about product B. But how are we going to label those? That's where we get to sentiment approach. One of the common types of label is sentiment or tone. Are we looking for positive, neutral, negative labeling? Do we want to define sentiment further? Is it an angry post? Is it a customer complaint post? Is it a happy post? Is it on brand? And then we want to look at spam and bot filtering. There's an amazing amount of spam on the internet. And as we start collecting data and doing social listening and using a variety of tools, we're going to get information that is not relevant to our brand or what we're looking for. What is our plan for cleaning our data once we have it, or removing the spam? Who's going to clean it? How do we make the decisions about which posts to remove and which information to remove? So, further into looking at developing a hypothesis, this is a statement or statements that help drive our research. They can be formed in the phrase of a question: who is our target audience for product X? This drives our research then. We would go out and build social listening and look at different websites and stuff and say, what are the demographics of the people that are coming to product X? We could also say, what type of content are people interacting with? That's a very different statement than who is the target audience for product X. Once when we're looking at those different hypotheses and how to develop those, we might look at some of our existing research. What information do we have that can help inform those questions? Talking to our coworkers, what questions would they want answered? Looking at some of our existing analytics, and maybe asking our online community, what do you want to know about X? What should we be looking for? Then we need to develop our time frame. Short-term data analysis is good for short-term projects. It is not good for developing long-term strategic goals. So we do need to make sure that if we're collecting for long-term strategic goals, we're collecting for a long enough time frame that we can actually make long-term decisions or see long-term trends. However, if we collect data over too long of a period, we might end up with stuff that is no longer relevant, especially if we're talking about social media listening and how fast we change topics and conversations. Best practices suggest a 12-month time frame for research analysis. We have to identify the project team. The team could be a very large team with multiple parts, or it could be a small team where people share roles. Generally, there is at the very least a project leader or someone who is in charge of making sure that the team stays on task and delivers the report that is going to result from all of this data analysis. We might also have people who are in charge of collecting research, people who are in charge of analyzing research, people who are in charge of making sure our research is clean. and good quality research, and then people who are in charge of content for this information. The depth of our analysis. How much information do we want to collect? So we can collect information a variety of ways. One, we can automate it using a dashboard tool. So we can have information feed into the dashboard and then use the dashboard as our analysis tool. So instead of sifting through the information ourselves, we just take what the dashboard shows us as the analysis. Of course, there are some downsides to this. We might not answer the exact questions that we're looking for based on the way that the dashboard has displayed the information. The next way is completely manually, where a person looks through the data themselves and sorts through the data and runs different statistical analysis on it without the use of an automated tool. The third method is a hybrid method, where it is both automated and manual. So we might automate to get some highlights and then use manual to get a better picture of what is coming from some of those highlights. The last method is random sampling. So in random sampling, instead of looking at all of the data that you have available to you, you pull out a random sample of the data. So if you have 200 data points, you might randomly select 50 data points as being representative of what's in that data. When we build our coding framework, we need to label our data. Various types of labels here. Media type. Where did the data come from? Is it from Facebook? Is it from Twitter? Is it from our website? Is it from Google Trends? Sentiment. Is it positive, negative, neutral? Messaging pillar, company spokesman. Was it a company spokesman who initiated the post? Was it someone internally that posted that message? Was it a customer who posted the message? So labeling them like that, the type of post, and maybe if it was a target journalist or media outlet, someone shared one of our posts and it's someone who we want to continue to share information. There are infinite number of ways to label and code your data. You want to come up with this plan before you start collecting. This should be well thought out, and you should stick to it during your data collection. Okay, as we've talked about the sentiment approach, the most common scale for sentiment is positive, negative, or neutral. But we can also look at automated or manual. So for you using a social listening tool to pull data, we can use an automated sentiment scoring tool. The problem is they might not label negative messages as negative or positive messages as positive. Whether or not we like it, AI still struggles with things like sarcasm and some sentiments. We don't even have to do positive, negative, or neutral. We could look at what is the value to the brand. So sentiment's not necessarily an indicator of overall brand reputation. So is this important to us, and how are we going to label it? And that is the end of our research analysis from chapter 13 in digital marketing analytics.